right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, this is a weird one. We're talking about Mad Heidi, a Swissploitation film that is out now on VOD. Yes, it is a Switzerland-based exploitation film that is very, very cheesy in more ways than one. It's a fun one, and we've been covering so many major movies lately, Mission Impossible, Barbie, Oppenheimer. I thought it would be fun to cover something that was a little bit smaller for a change, and joining me to talk about it is our good buddy Chad Clinton Freeman, who hasn't been on the show in a while, and I was happy to get him back on. So we have a fun conversation, lots of exploitation stuff to get into in that conversation. That's coming up here in a minute. Before we get to it, though, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. I also want to let you know we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together. Speaking of major movies, I also have the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and the Flash episodes on there that will be hitting the main feed eventually when they get to streaming, but for now you can listen to them early over on Patreon. There's also bonus content from Awesome Movie Year and from my music career. You can check that out at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And, I appreciate you just being out there listening, but if you want to support the show in that way, I appreciate that too. Also, we do have another live show coming up in August. It will be at Maya Cinemas on Thursday, August 17th on the new movie Strays. I'm very excited about that. We just launched an Enter to Win contest for tickets, so check the show notes for that and look forward to more news on that and more stuff going on with Piecing It Together very soon. But for now, let's get into Mad Heidi. Chad Clinton Freeman is back on the podcast. It's been a while. Chad, how's it going?
It's going good. Yeah, definitely been a bit, I don't know. This just hasn't been a great movie season, I think.
Yeah.
This year's been a little weak for me.
It's been a weird one for sure, but I know you loved the movie that we're about to talk about today, which I'm not surprised.
Definitely.
This is up your alley for sure. So I'm glad to have you here on the podcast to talk about Mad Heidi. This is such a ridiculous movie, very cheesy, of course. Chad, what did you love about Mad Heidi?
It's just so one, it delivers on what you're expecting completely.
Mm-hmm.
It is cheesy, yes. The trailers show you cheese, and you indeed get cheese, and it's works in the world that it's in. I mean, it's not out of nowhere cheese, and so if you go in expecting that, and it's just a ridiculous, over the top world, that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this definitely did work.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Before we start getting into some puzzle pieces, we should mention really quickly, do you have a favorite cheese?
I love all cheeses, actually.
Yeah.
I'm big on pepper jack cheese. Ooh, and I'm big on sharp cheddar.
Yeah.
I'm not a, has to be this or has to be that, but I also like Swiss cheese and provolone cheese. Cheese is great.
Yeah.
I'd
throw mozzarella into the mix. One of the best.
Mozzarella's great too.
Oh yeah,
mozzarella's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I even like blue cheese. I'm a cheese lover.
Awesome. We could just not talk about the movie and talk about cheese for the next 40 minutes, but let's get to some puzzle pieces. What do you have for your first puzzle piece?
So, first puzzle piece, I was trying to think, some of the movies that came to mind first for me. Well, instantly with this movie, because it's got a lot of pieces to it. It's lots of different parts of different genres. And one of the two that really stand out is one, it is part women in prison film, and then it's also part gladiator film. And so I was thinking of the movie The Arena from the 70s, which Pam Grier movie, and that movie is kind of like a spin on the Spartacus story,
Okay.
which is this movie is in its own way too. Because Spartacus came to mind, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to use Spartacus as a puzzle piece. I've used that plenty enough with other shows. So the arena, basically, it's a throw women into this situation where they're stripped of all their dignity and you know, their families, strip them of nothing, and then make them fight each other, and then they end up turning and revolting against those that are putting them in that situation. And so
Yeah.
essentially that's what you have with Mad Heidi. It follows that same story that like so many movies have followed it, even like, and I was thinking about this, movies that I absolutely love, like War for the Planet of the Apes kind of follows that same storyline in a bit, because you just have this person stripped of everything, and they overcome, and it's not necessarily, it's partly revenge, but it becomes bigger than revenge, and it becomes a because it's right, an anti, tyranny type of situation. And
Yeah.
so that's definitely what Mad Heidi is, and part of what makes it so much fun, that it's not just a personal revenge; it's bigger than that. It's the whole uh, like world that she is living in and everybody else is living in. So it becomes bigger than just the revenge that she's seeking.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just jump right on top there because what I was thinking for that kind of a revenge story, I was thinking of Conan the Barbarian for a puzzle
Nice.
piece here. Definitely just that like somebody getting absolutely everything taken from them. And
Hmm.
you mentioned gladiator type movies. I was also thinking of Gladiator. It
Right,
kind of fits
right,
this mold
exactly.
too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so really you could kind of put both of those together. But yeah, somebody who just gets absolutely everything taken from them so that you are just 100% on board with their journey. You just want them to kick everybody's ass, and sure
Right,
enough, they do.
right.
And there's also like the kind of mystical elements of the story, when Mad Heidi like meets up with these like this character who like kind of grants her strength, and like you get
Right.
stuff like that in Conan. So yeah, there's it's also little cheesy by today's standards. If I just rewatched Conan the Barbarian last year, and it's a little cheesy in a different way. Not cheese like isn't a food cheese, but cheesy.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while since I visited Conan the Barbarian. I saw that very, very young, and I don't think I've watched it really since. It didn't really resonate with me at the time, so I don't know how I'd feel about it. But yeah, no, definitely that totally fits here. And you mentioned Gladiator. The funny thing is the actor, I believe it's the grandpa, is from Gladiator.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, yeah, they're almost like in the casting, because this is a totally indie funded project. I They're little almost puzzle pieces within the casting itself, like
Yeah.
that I think that they had fun with, of like obviously a little bit of Gladiator in there, that there is an actor from Gladiator, and then also at times there's a little with the anti-propaganda, there's a little bit of the hopefully it's not a piece of yours, the Starship Troopers
Right.
and the casting with the president. So I think there's some fun things like that.
Yeah.
uh,
No,
but
absolutely. I wasn't going to use it as a puzzle piece, but they do have the "I'm doing my part"
right.
thing. So that's
Right,
totally a Starship Troopers reference
right,
there. So yeah,
exactly.
they're having a lot of fun with that. So I
Yeah.
love that. That's awesome. What do you have for another puzzle piece?
I'll go simple this time, and I was thinking Clockwork Orange.
Ooh.
The main part that came to mind for me was when Heidi is in the prison cell, and the main guard, comes in, and she's basically puts on the music, and it's like this, you know, kind of upbeat, happy music, and she's basically torturing her, kicking her,
Yeah,
it's just very much like the Singing in the Rain with A Clockwork Orange,
sure.
or even like Reservoir Dogs with the torture scene when
Yeah,
Michael Madsen cuts off the ear. It's just that gleefulness of violence,
yeah,
and kind of going on at the same time. So it just has that. It comes off so absurd and almost silly, even though it's like very very you know intense and dark. It's
yeah,
something that like Rob Zombie likes to play around
sure.
with a lot too. But Clockwork
Yeah.
Orange has always been the one that really jumps out to me whenever I see something like that in a movie.
Yeah, I think that that's like the main reason to make this kind of like exploitation type film is to mix that humor with that ultra violence
Right.
and, just like kind of see if they can, mesh together in that way. So, yeah, no, absolutely. I will go with another like exploitation grindhouse type movie that is trying to recapture that vibe.
Right.
I'm going to go with Machete from
Right.
Robert Rodriguez and Danny Trejo, which is, of course, trying to put a Mexican spin on the exploitation grindhouse, like ultra violent, hilarious, ridiculous kind of thing. And this putting a Swiss spin on that. It's the same kind of idea of like kind of painting it with a different culture, this kind of a movie, and all the things that are associated with that particular culture. I'd say they're also like, I know you loved Mad Heidi. I was a little mixed on it. Like I thought it was fun, but I didn't like love it. I feel like I'm like roughly on the same level with Machete as I am with Mad Heidi.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm different because
Mm,
Machete, I don't know what it is about Machete. I couldn't get on board with Machete. To me, to me, it was too silly. Okay, and I know that makes it's odd. Somebody is defending Mad Heidi saying Machete was too silly, but
right.
no, it totally. I was when I was watching Mad Heidi, I was like, this is what he wanted with Machete, but
Hmm.
it didn't somehow translate for me, whereas this one totally did. And I don't know, it's because I was totally expecting it to be as, absurd and silly, and I expected Machete to not be, and I was watching Machete in the wrong frame of mind.
Hmm.
I will say I did like the sequel of Machete more than I did the first one, but
Okay.
I may have to revisit the first one because I know at the time that I watched it, I was not a fan. But yeah, totally the same sort of thing. And as far as like the Swissploitation, there's been a lot of talk, I guess, of this being the first Swissploitation film, and evidently that's not true because I
Oh.
read some nerds online that were saying that, well, this movie and you know 1960 something in this
Oh
movie,
my
and
God.
there's been like three movies I guess before this that were actually Swissploitation. So
Wow.
I
Talk about
doubt they
puzzle
were.
pieces.
I doubt. I doubt they were as heavy like handed, in the whole Swiss, with the cheese, and then also with like the famous Swiss Alps. Evidently is in this movie like three or four times,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like there's a lot of inside jokes. Evidently, if you're from Switzerland or know Switzerland, that are just completely over the top silly that we don't even totally get because of locations and things like that. But
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine so. But I definitely recognize some of that stuff from like,
right,
like the Swiss Miss box, stuff like
right,
that. Like it's
right,
just
right,
it's
yeah,
totally on the nose, but like leaning into that is part of the fun of this movie. So,
yeah.
yeah, what do you have for another piece?
Well, before we do that, I was going to say though that I absolutely love that though that people of a certain culture are leaning into that and just kind of playing with all of that. I really really much appreciated that, like that this was actually Swiss made, and evidently they faced a lot of backlash in Switzerland. A lot of people were
Wow.
against them, so like the costuming and locations and things like that, they had to lie and say they were with a different movie. Because they wouldn't like the outfit for Goat Peter. They wouldn't rent it to them, so they had to then go back and be like, "Oh, we're with this movie," and then they rented it, and like a lot of
So
tradition
ridiculous.
and traditional people that just did not want anything to do with this movie, expecting it to be, completely just, I guess, making fun of their
Yeah.
culture. So, yeah.
Wow, those people must be like the I don't know, like the far right of America. Like that must be like that kind of a thing in
Yeah.
Switzerland who just doesn't want to like no room for humor whatsoever, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's ridiculous. All right, what do you got next?
Okay. Well, I guess another meaty one that we can talk about a couple of different pieces along with it would be Lady Snowblood, because Lady Snowblood is like one of the famous, uh, women samurai uh, movies,
Yeah.
and that's like a big influence for Kill Bill. And of course, Kill Bill is one that, like, if you were going to recommend this to somebody who's not necessarily a movie fan that knows mainstream movies, you would say, oh, if you like Kill Bill, you'd like this. So Lady Snowblood is a good one. um that's like a classic. And that one is pretty much a simple revenge movie, and it's basically a woman who, her birth, it's almost like this um supernatural element of it, that she was
Mhm.
born for revenge, that she was born with her mother's soul inside her, because her mother, um the dad was, well, the husband, because it wasn't the dad, the husband was killed viciously, and then she was raped and tortured, thrown into prison, and then she basically intentionally got pregnant by having sex with everybody in the prison until she had this baby, and the baby was born for revenge. And then that's Lady Snowblood, and she just goes around basically killing all the people that had anything to do
That's a hell of
with.
an origin story.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. And it's very Kill Bill, because it's broken down into chapters, and it's
Mhm.
basically a list of, go get this one, go get this one, go get this one. But there's definitely that element. Like, this Mad Heidi has so many different elements to it that it's like, there's not like any perfect one piece, because there's so many different pieces. There's so many different bits in here. You've got the kung fu samurai elements. That's not the whole point of the movie. It's just like a small part of it. But at the same time, that revenge element, um, makes this one fit, especially with that being like one of the go-to like classics as far as that goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you first started talking about it, what I thought you were gonna bring up was, which I've never actually seen, and of course I already brought up Conan the Barbarian, but I thought you were gonna bring up Red Sonja, which kind of fits in that same mold too. Are you a fan of that one? That seems like a you movie.
I think I saw that one and wasn't big of it. None of the Conan stuff really was big with me at the
Mhm.
time, and
Yeah.
I haven't revisited, and that's one that I haven't like gone back to watch either. But
I believe they're making a remake of that, I
they
believe.
they've been trying to for a long time. Actually, Robert Rodriguez, speaking
Oh, wow.
of speaking of Machete, for the longest time, Rose McGowan was going to be in it. That's how long ago, because she's kind
Wow.
of like not in the, like, this was back, Planet Terror days that Red Sonja was going to happen. So I don't know, but
Sure.
there's still some talks that it's going to happen, just like there is of He-Man constantly. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, we'll believe that when we see it for sure. I will go. So you already put the kibosh on this one a little bit because you mentioned that there actually were other Swissploitation movies in the past, and that has been dug up. But the idea of this inventing this new genre,
Right.
and also for the sake of making a genre for the sake of just doing a new, very silly thing. I was thinking of Kung Pao, with Steve Odenkirk doing this movie where he inserts himself into all these old martial arts films, which
Right.
just for the sake of making this big, totally ridiculous, like goof of a film. And Kung Pao is like a favorite of mine. I love that movie so much. And we never really saw anything quite like it up until that point. We really haven't since then either. I mean, it's almost like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 kind of thing. Like it's not really a thing that they make movies like that. And I can't imagine, even if there are other Swissploitation films, that there's a lot of them. Maybe it's a few at most.
Right. No, yeah, you're right with the Kung Pao. That is a good example, um, because that movie definitely plays into, you know, you say kung fu or you say martial arts, that sounds like that's kind of a small, like, sandbox, but it's actually huge because
Yeah,
there's
it
so
is.
many subgenres within that. And then it that's an example of a movie that kind of just bounces around and plays with different elements, and that's what this one does inside of exploitation as in general. Because
Yeah.
I was writing a list as far as like various things that it does hit upon. Because one, women in prison that I mentioned, of course the gladiator or sword and sandal,
Hmm.
and then Kung Fu Samurai, of course, gore, which that was the other thing with Lady Snowblood, is that it was one with the like the spurting blood when somebody gets killed and things like that, like Kill Bill as well,
Sure.
which this is great at. Western, black
Hmm.
exploitation,
Hmm.
exploitation, sexploitation. I mean, all of that. There's bits here and there of every single like um, fun genre that you can think of from like the 70s, just all
Yeah,
crammed into this movie.
absolutely. Yeah.
And with the Kung Pao, it's kind of like anything, everything kind of martial arts kind of crammed in there. So
Yeah,
yeah,
anything goes. And like if we can make goofs about it, we're throwing it in the movie. Like let's just do it, you know?
right,
And
right.
yeah, speaking of the sexploitation over on Awesome Movie Year, we're doing 1975 and we just did Switchblade Sisters was the audience choice winner.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah, it was a fun one to talk about, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
no, that's one I love. That's one recently came out on Blu-ray that I purchased probably last year or year before.
Nice.
But yeah, Switchblade Sisters, I love that movie. It's
Yeah, it was pretty
fantastic.
great. Pretty
Yeah.
great. What do you got for another piece?
I'm gonna throw some Sucker Punch out there because I just think Sucker Punch is
Yeah.
another if you're talking mainstream movies and you're trying to tell people recommendations for this, I was like that's what I said basically. Kill Bill. If you like Kill Bill, if you like Sucker Punch, you're gonna enjoy this.
Yeah.
Just because it follows that same storyline also of the main woman character that's got everything stripped away, and then
Yeah.
basically in Sucker Punch she in her head is a badass, but in this one she becomes a badass in actuality. But just the women kicking ass and then kind of leading the uprising against
Yeah.
the those that are holding them down. So
Yeah.
yeah,
For
no,
sure.
and just so very very showy and so very about the spectacle of it all.
Yeah.
More so than worried about you know uh, the story itself. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Super over the top. And yeah, I had it on my list too. I was planning on stealing it from you because I knew you would have it too. But yeah, no, definitely Sucker Punch is a good one to point to. And you get the women in prison kind of thing and like
hmm
all of
right.
it, all the things you were just
Right.
saying, definitely.
Right. Well, and then at the same time, this one is so showy and so spectacle. It feels a bit Bollywood in its way, and I would say that whether Zack Snyder borrows from Bollywood or Bollywood borrows from him, there's definitely some uh, like influence that goes on there, and to me there were certain things that definitely felt very Bollywood, not just the bigness and the just like the whole submerged into this odd like alternate universe almost,
Right.
but specifically the main bad, like monster that she fights. The I forget his name. Neutralizer. Was that his name?
I
No.
I think so.
Yeah.
Was it
So yeah,
neutralizer?
his weapons and stuff on his body, the way his armor shoots out the balls and all of that. That is very video game, but also very Bollywood and like stuff that they would have in their type of movies. Just that over the topness, which I feel like is what Zack Snyder does in U.S. movies, and I think it's so weird and so out there for U.S. movies that they don't get on board the showiness of his films. But Bollywood, it's like toned down. Like that would just be one little thing of a whole bunch of over the top elements. So
Yeah, those movies are absolutely nuts a lot of the times, and yeah, you got to dial that back. I think American audiences aren't always necessarily on board it being that crazy, but yeah, no, definitely. I love bringing Sucker Punch in. I'm gonna go. I don't usually bring up movies that I haven't seen, but there's just a vibe to it that like it reminded me of those Iron Sky movies with Nazis on the moon.
mm,
Nazi exploitation, another exploitation kind of thing that that we can throw in there. But the Swiss, like the higher ups, they definitely. I don't know much about Swiss culture, but they definitely have Nazi vibes to them, and it feels like we're taking like classic Nazi bad guys in movies and just transporting them to the Alps. And
oh, definitely,
you
definitely.
know, they all feel like they could be like head Nazi guys, and so it's so much fun in a ultra violent movie to watch Nazis just get blown away. So and to root for them to get their comeuppance. So it's Nazis as bad guys are always fun to root for getting killed, and that'll actually factor into my final puzzle piece too.
Yeah, I would say the Iron Sky. I've seen that. Not a fan. It again. It
Hmm.
was one of those that just didn't quite work for me. And and yeah, kind of the same thing. It I would say is less. Of course, maybe I don't know a lot about the uh, stereotypes of like Russian culture, but I would say that it's less like Russian specific references, whereas this one definitely like the silliness of the cheese and the chocolate and things like that.
Yeah.
Those are just all things I think that are ingrained into the uh, everybody's mind in regards to Switzerland. But with
Right.
Russia, I mean, there's not a lot of those that for me come to mind. So I don't know if maybe they were in there in Iron Sky and I didn't get it. But yeah, Iron Sky to me did not work as far as that one was just came off silly. And I know
Yeah.
defending Mad Heidi and calling Machete and Iron Sky silly. Well,
Well,
that's my
to that
opinion.
point though, before we move on to another piece, that's an interesting thing about these kinds of modern trying to be exploitation movies that it is such a fine line between what makes one a good one and what makes one a bad one. It's like such a hard thing to really put your finger on, like what will make anyone, you or me or anyone else, connect with it.
Right,
Somebody could watch Mad Heidi and just be like, "This is stupid,"
right,
or you could
right,
watch it and love it, and it's one of your favorite
right,
movies of the year. And I come in somewhere in the middle.
right.
It's so hard to pin down what is going to make someone connect to an exploitation film.
Right. Yeah, no, you're totally right. And that I would say you know, Quentin Tarantino even though he in I guess as far as mainstream it's like kind of a more toned down version or at least he slowly has been putting more and more into like more exploitation and kind of cranking things up a little bit at a time even though his last movie kind of dialed it back. um the the ridiculousness, the absurdness, um like one trying not to make fun of the movies that came before, but at the same time trying to have fun at their expense. It is a tough thing. I mean, it totally is. So for a movie like this to actually work and to actually feel like, okay, yeah, that was silly. not being the only reaction that you get out of somebody. That is a very, very hard thing to do. That's one of
Yeah.
the things, though, that shows you how brilliant somebody like Tarantino is, that he's slowly helped ingrain a lot of exploitation into the masses, beginning with Reservoir Dogs and then Pulp Fiction. Think of the time frame when that movie came out, about how different it was for the
Oh yeah.
masses. And now what he does with something like Inglorious Basterds, which isn't that far removed from Mad Heidi in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
especially speaking of like what you were talking about with the Nazi elements.
Yeah.
So, but
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
no, it's definitely hard.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you have next?
I'll go with actually a couple of fun exploitation movies, that modern exploitation movies, indie films that kind of did a bit of this same thing but in different ways. And one is the movie Pervert, which took a lot of the Russ Meyer and sexploitation movies and kind of put it all into a blender and made this uh, fun, silly, but also really good look at like that sort of genre of movies. And that was about 2007 or so that had came out. That was right before I um, really. Well, it was right when I was doing my Polystaffel website before I got into the Pollygrind Film Festival. Mike
Okay.
Davis is actually the writer of that film.
Oh, right on.
And then, of course, from that, I was thinking of Dear God No, which, of course, was one of the Pollygrind films that
Yeah.
was exploitation, that had, the biker exploitation and sexploitation and all sorts of craziness and silliness, doing a lot of the same thing, though, of just incorporating anything and everything, almost in that I'm gonna get you sucker kind of way of
Sure.
of
Yeah.
of of looking back at the exploitation movies, and then just kind of seeing how many different types can get put into a film because of the love of those type of movies. So those were two indie ones, though, that I had thought of.
I'm gonna have to watch Pervert. Mike Davis was a really cool dude. I haven't heard from him in years, but yeah, that President Wolfman. I always remember how much fun that was at Polygrind.
Oh yeah,
And yeah,
Pervert is a lot of fun. It stars Mary Carey, who was the uh, Mariah Carey looking porn star, and
nice.
it's basically putting her. They actually use like the same ranch that Russ Meyer used for a lot of his movies, so it's very. A lot of Russ Meyer fans did not like it because I guess it goes too far, but
Uh,
it's not meant to be just a tribute to Russ Meyer. It's just supposed to be in general, a tribute to uh, those kind of movies. And
yeah.
I guess some people didn't feel that it was as female empowerment as it was trying to be, but I thought it was great. So
Right on, right on. Yeah, and then Dear God No, one of my
yeah,
favorite Polygrind movies. So much fun.
right, right,
So over the
right,
top. It's insane.
right.
Yeah,
R-
yeah,
Well, and that's the thing, though, to be like, from going from like 2007 and then was probably 2011, Dear God No, those to have been like movies that I had to like seek out and get like, you know, copies from the directors, to now here we are that this isn't on streaming or anything, but you can buy this on Amazon, and actually, uh, this was, backed on. I don't know if it was Indiegogo or where it was, but it was a big, campaign to back this, and for this to be, not quite mainstream, but it's more mainstream than I would say those movies
sure.
at that time.
Yeah.
You didn't have to go to Theater 7 to watch it. I could just buy it online from Amazon, and then it came in the mail.
But it probably would have raised my opinion of Mad Heidi if I had seen it in a Theater 7 with a bunch of, crazy drunk fans, everybody just eating cheese and having a good old time. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. If this was to be shown at a theater, they'd have to be serving cheese. I mean,
Oh hell
definitely.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, now we're talking. I'll do my last puzzle piece, which is probably too new to actually be a inspiration to the making of this one, but definitely a good companion piece. This year's Sisu, which is another ultra-violent action revenge film with a very specific cultural lens attached to it. In this case, it's from Finland, as a Finnish film, a guy who has everything taken from him. Well, he doesn't really have everything taken from him. He's fine. He has no issue. He just wants to get home with his gold. But then we can spend, 90 minutes or however long the movie is just cheering for him to blow up and blow to hell a whole bunch of Nazis. And like I was saying, like Nazis are just great movie cannon fodder. So, you get that aspect of it, the vibe that these bad guys give off in Mad Heidi, that they're like Nazis. And just kind of that whole revenge thing kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Gladiator and Conan the Barbarian, and just this guy who's just unstoppable, and you never have any kind of sense that like he's they're not going to stop him. He's going to kill every last one of them, and you're along for the ride to just have fun and laugh as he kills people, and that's kind of how I felt watching Mad Heidi. It's just like, yeah, Heidi is just going to kill all these people.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Did you see Sisu yet?
I did not know. I've been sleeping on
Yeah.
my movie watching this year. I don't think I've watched quite 200 yet.
Mhm.
Um, I think I'm closing. Actually, I probably might be to 200 if I've been keeping track of my lifetime movie watches, but I sometimes
Jeez.
forget to add them to my list. um, no, I hadn't seen that one yet. I didn't know if that one was more in line with like the John Wick movies, if it was kind of going in that direction, or if it was a bit more grounded. But I'll definitely be watching that one soon,
Yeah.
definitely soon. Um, but you said that was your last one. The last one for me, and I didn't even know this was a Swiss movie until I was just now double checking. Thriller, A Cruel Picture. That's my last piece, which rape revenge movie from 1973. It was actually a Swedish movie, so
Hmm.
it may be one of the first. I don't even think this was one mentioned in the list that I saw of the Swedish exploitation movies. But this is a movie that also influenced Kill Bill, and that the main character, she ends up wearing an eye patch, and she goes on a rampage, killing people that had basically, same situation of she was basically turned into a sex slave, and she goes about killing, you know, everybody that had anything to do with her being in that situation.
Yeah.
The infamous thing about this movie is that there's two cuts of it. One of them actually contains uh, pornographic scenes, and so this movie, due to the pornographic scenes, and then also due to the violence, a lot of people feel, even fans of exploitation, feel that it goes a little too far.
Hmm.
Of course, I've got this on Blu-ray when it came out
Tarantino, of
last
course, is a
year.
big
I
fan. Yeah.
yeah, of course. But yeah, no, the Thriller, A Cruel Picture is a great movie. I mean, I wouldn't suggest it to everybody because it is a rough watch.
Yeah.
And coming from me, if I say it's a rough watch, then yeah, it's a rough watch. But at the same time, it's truly is a classic, and like a groundbreaking movie, because 1973 it came out, and revenge movie that you want her to, you know, take down anybody and everybody. You're just completely all in on her side.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Mad Heidi, again, going back to my first one, it taps into that side of it, but then also it also taps into that uh, bigger than her worldview of not just, the revenge for her, but also just revenge for the have-nots versus the haves,
Sure.
which always is really, really great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a fun ride to watch that kind of thing play out, especially when it's ultra violent and there's lots of cheese involved. Um, so
And zombies. We forgot
yeah,
zombies.
and
There are zombies too, which would go back to like Dear God No of all of a sudden here's this other element.
fuck it, let's put some zombies in the movie, basically. Yeah, the
Right.
best, my favorite line of the movie is when the guy says, "Now that's what I call Swiss cheese," after blowing a hole through a zombie.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's such like a forced in one liner. Like it just does not
Right.
even like really work, but that's what makes it
Oh,
so funny.
the one-liners are very, very forced. There's
Yeah,
so many of them, but it's very 80s. It's very like Stallone or Schwarzenegger. I mean, it's not far removed from those big mainstream movies.
yeah.
I mean, one of my favorites is the like I can't remember if she says I'm not a good girl anymore or she says it's the one where she kills the guard in her prison cell.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I think she says I'm not the good girl anymore or something. It's just like so forced, so cheesy, but it's just like so great because in this world like the absurd is like just the main thing of everything. If
Yeah.
it's not absurd, it's probably not in the movie. I mean, the boyfriend's name is Goat Peter. I mean, kind of name is Goat Peter. I mean,
This is ridiculous ass movie. All right, I'm gonna read down the finished list of puzzle pieces here. We talked about the arena, and you threw War for the Planet of the Apes in there. Conan the Barbarian and Gladiator, A Clockwork Orange and Reservoir Dogs, Machete, Lady Snowblood, Kill Bill, Red Sonja, Kung Pao, Sucker Punch, Iron Sky, Inglorious Bastards, Pervert, Dear God No, Sisu, and Thriller, A Cruel Picture. A great list with lots of revenge going on, lots of people getting
definitely.
murdered, especially
Yes.
people that look like Nazis. Um, as far as like closing thoughts here, I will say we end on Heidi and Clara will return in ... Heidi and Clara. Do you
Right.
do you want to see a Heidi and Clara movie?
Oh, definitely. I was excited.
Hell yeah.
I think the title could use a little work, but I definitely want it.
Yes.
Yeah, because Clara, it's funny because by the time it came back around to the end, I was like, wait a minute. I thought Clara died. Like I thought she died like a couple of times, and then she
Yeah.
just keeps popping up. So, but that's the thing is that in the original Heidi, I guess Clara was in a wheelchair. So where we find her at the end, it's just kind of like the origin story of Clara.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of neat because
Good
I didn't even
stuff.
I'm kind of watching this far removed from the original source material Heidi, but evidently there's a lot of little things like that if you know Heidi that you'll pick up on.
Yeah.
Not only that, we didn't mention the Sound of Music. Of course, that was one of the
Yes.
easy pieces
Mhm.
that from the get go, like in the trailer, was there. But yeah, just this movie, so much fun, and that's. You watch the trailer and you're like, okay, this is going to be silly. This is going to be ridiculous. This is going to be cheesy, and that's exactly what you get. At the same time, though, I think it looks fantastic. It looks great, and so it's definitely in my top 5 for the year. It is
Awesome.
so.
Hell yeah. I'll also throw in there one last thing. Great score. It definitely leans into the exploitation vibe of just those big, heavy, like, action-packed scores.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a solid one. And if you like these kinds of movies, I'd say that it's like one of the better ones we've gotten recently. So yeah, I'm glad we did this one, Chad. Is there another movie you
Right.
watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
I guess I'd have to go with my favorite movie this year so far, and that's Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
Okay.
I absolutely love that movie. I saw it at the theater, loved it, and it went to the number one. And then I just got it on Blu-ray just a couple of days ago and rewatched it. And yeah, that movie's just so solid. Of course, Jake Gyllenhaal. It's hard to top him. He's fantastic in everything. And then this is just a really, really, really good movie about basically doing the right thing because it's the right thing. Because you've got these two guys that don't really like each other, that get into situations where the one ends up basically carrying the other on his back, and then after that, the other one has to go and save the other one. So I mean, it's a great movie about survival, and a great movie about doing good for another person. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to finally getting to it. I finally got to Operation Fortune like a couple of weeks ago, which I was really late on, but I will definitely check out The Covenant soon.
What did you think of Operation Fortune? Because I wasn't big on it.
I liked it, but I definitely didn't like it as much as like The Gentleman or other similar Guy Ritchie movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it, but I mean, it started off where I was like, "Oh, this is great," and then halfway through, I'm like, "This is Man from Uncle," and it was just too Man from Uncle without it being Man from Uncle. It's like, do a sequel.
Right.
Get Henry back. I mean, even though there was some really great moments and funny characters, but it just wore thin for me.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely accurate. But yeah, Chad, this is your first time on in like over 6 months, I think. And since then, you have been doing a whole lot of live streaming. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do some live streaming on Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, basically helping promote and share indie music videos of the community on YouTube. And then on Saturdays, I have my own show on my YouTube channel. And I have a show called The Ham Show at 4 p.m. Eastern. And what The Ham Show is I've got a Facebook group, Headphones and Microphones. That's where the ham comes from. It's not me because I love to eat ham or anything.
But you do like cheese, and cheese goes well with ham. So.
Yeah, cheese and ham. Yeah. So basically, I started this group earlier this year to help promote indie artists, indie musicians, and now I've got this show that artists that are in the group, I share out their music. So yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Chad Freeman, or you can find the other show, the Friday show, under Conspiracy Music, because it's actually his show and I'm just a co-host. But yeah, no, that's like a 6-hour show, and then mine is 2 to 3 hours, so I'm streaming like as much as 9 hours a week right now.
That is dedication. Well, I really recommend listeners of Piecing It Together check out what Chad is doing over there. I'll put links in the show notes. And Chad, it was so great to have you back on the show. Hopefully we'll get you back again sometime.
Oh yeah, definitely. Hopefully there's a little movie coming out from Netflix in December that hopefully we can talk about. So director named Zack Snyder that some people may have heard me mention before. So
I look forward to it.
Welcome to the podcast that wouldn't die. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, as always, is Aaron.
What up, what up?
Each week, we'll explore the classics of the horror and sci-fi genre with a little comedic twist.
We will ask those important questions like, why don't they get out of the haunted house the first time they see the ghost or the demon?
Why do people feel like, hey, there's been a spooky disappearance, but I'm going to investigate myself, even though I have no investigative background?
Or, why didn't I realize I was dead the whole time?
These important questions and many others we will get to the bottom of. So check us out each week at the podcast that wouldn't die.
Be there or be square.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Mad Heidi. Thanks to Clinton Freeman for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you're listening. And of course, if that happens to be Apple Podcasts, Good Pod, Spotify, you could drop a 5-star rating. That would be very helpful. We would really appreciate it if you did that. Also, share the show. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, and check out the Patreon. Lots of stuff around piecing it together that you can go check out. And I appreciate you guys all being out there and listening. So, with that said, let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And what do you play for a Swiss movie all about killing and gore and cheese? What the hell am I going to play for this one? You know, I got this comedy rap song that might come out at some point called Fancy Cheeses. That would have been like really good to play, but it's not ready yet. Too bad. Maybe you'll hear it one of these days. But I'm just going to go with, a song from my most recent album, my comedy album of songs about my dogs and cats, the Pup Pups, because why not? That'll fit. We'll go with a song that was about my cat, my orange tabby, the Lily Bear. This is a song called Muffin Maker. Muffins are food. Cheese is food. Mad Heidi's all about cheese. That's a good fit. Why not? Let's go with Muffin Maker from the album The Pup Pups, Who Wants Dien, which is available now. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more piecing it together real soon.
Hey there, little kitty, why don't you make me something? Come on over here just to make some muffins. Hey there, little kitty, why don't you make me something? Climb up on my belly and I'll make some muffins. You know that there's something I've been eating. I see you over there just baking and eating. I know you got that recipe for making something so tasty, so why don't you come on over here and just make a batch for me? Hey there, little kitty, why don't you make me something? Come on over here just to make some muffins. Hey there, little kitty, why don't you make me something? Climb up on my belly and I'll make some muffins. You might call it baking bread, you might call it making biscuits, but whatever you call it, baby, you know they're making something delicious. I said, hey there, little kitty, why don't you make me something? Climb up on my belly and I'll make some muffins. Some muffins. Some muffins. Make some
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.